Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to the Whitehall City Council meeting of December 1st, 2020. I'd like to start with a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this time, I would accept a motion to excuse the absent member.
Mr. President, move to excuse the absent member.
Second.
There's been a motion by Mr. Bailey, seconded by Mr. Rodriguez to excuse the absent member. Any discussion on the motion?
We haven't called roll yet.
We have not.
Oh, you're right, we did it.
Here.
Back thought.
Yeah, Ms. Aug, will you please call roll?
Moore, Thomason,
Present.
Cantor,
Present.
Peck,
Present.
Morrison,
Present.
Bailey,
Present.
Rodriguez,
Present.
President Potter.
Present. Now, I'll ask if there's any discussion on the motion to excuse the absent member. Thank you, Chris, for keeping me in my lane. And if there is no discussion, Ms. Aug, would you please call roll?
Thomason,
Yes.
Cantor,
Yes.
Peck,
Yes.
Morrison,
Yes.
Bailey,
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
The absent member has been excused. At this time, I accept a motion for the approval of the November 17th, 2020 agenda and regular meeting minutes.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes.
I would second that, but
What
what's
a shock.
the parks, our parks meeting, we're not supposed to be on
That's,
that? Our parks and reviews minutes, isn't that supposed to be on
I
it? I
don't,
don't remember. but
I don't see those
thought it was.
listed.
Okay.
So there's been a motion by Ms. Coniston, seconded by Mr. Cantor for the approval of the November 17th, 2020 agenda and regular meeting minutes. Any discussion? Ms. Aug.
Thomason,
Yes.
Cantor,
Yes.
Peck,
Yes.
Morrison,
Yes.
Bailey,
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
The minutes have been approved. At this time, we have a special presentation by Megan Meyer, our Community Affairs Manager, who will share with us results of the 2020 Community Attitudes Survey.
Thank you, President Potter. And I give Zach a moment to bring up the survey PowerPoint, but for anybody following along from home, on the city's website, you can find a full version of this summary that I'm giving. I'm going to skip a couple slides, so if you are following along from home, you'll notice I'll jump around a little bit. Also available online is an infographic explaining kind of really high-level results. You can also grab that from the city's Facebook page as of this evening. So we're going to jump right into the method. So slide, one more slide. As in years past, we partnered with a third-party professional polling firm, Saperstein and Associates, to conduct a community attitude survey, and we like to do that over the phone for a number of reasons. However, as we'll kind of get into, it is getting more complicated. So to make that possible and still to get a large enough N or sample size, they did have to dial over 12,000 phone numbers, which we garnered from both voter registration rules and city school registration, and to try to capture quite a bit of the population. And more so than ever, they had to dial numbers multiple times. That being said, they did get a large enough sample size. 355 residents did complete the survey totally. And so what that means is that we can assume that sample is representative of the community. And if you're following along online, it breaks it down by strata, so you can see how the sample size aligns with the actual population demographics in Whitehall. And so with that sample size, we are able to have a 95% level of confidence, which is considered to be high in statistics, with a plus or minus 5.2% margin of error. So all of it does come with a little bit of grain of salt. You're seeing things move 1 percentage point every which way. That could mean nothing, or it could mean something. It really just, you have to keep looking for trends over time. So with that nerdiness, we're going to continue to, oh, sorry, I didn't realize they were individual points. Next slide, please. All right, so before we get into the results, just kind of a breakdown of what we saw with the actual And if you're looking at the infographic piece of some of the things that we pulled out, 51% of them being married, 47% living with children, 35% having a child in one of my Hall City schools, things like that. But a couple big pieces that I do want to click on is that, go ahead and bring up the whole slide, there we go. So two big things from this, and we're going to touch on this later. 33% of respondents said they follow the city on Facebook. You can see there are kind of plus and minus gains listed next to each item. That's a 7% gain. That is statistically significant over the last year, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more. And then also, if you're looking over at the right-hand side, likely to stay in Whitehall at least 2 or more years, that's actually decreased by 7 percentage points. So that's another interesting indicator of things happening in the community. So people moving in, moving out. Also a reduction in home ownership, and so that's also interesting to see. It may impact the way that these questions were answered a little bit. So we're going to move right into the responses. As in years past, so this is the third survey we've done with Sacrosine. We did one in 2016, one in 2018, this being our third. So we always ask kind of high-level questions about how we're doing as a community overall, and then we break it down into specific city service levels, into specifics about how city officials are responding, and then also how we're doing with staff members. And so we're going to go through each of those topic areas, as well as their priorities too, which we'll see from that. So slide. So this is kind of the age-old question. You always hear this in community surveys, right? How are we doing as a place to live? And so in years past, this hasn't changed too dramatically. It is pretty close to that margin of error, but we are seeing about 3 to 10 residents considering Whitehall is an excellent or above average place to live. Again, within that margin of error, it is slightly down, so that could be significant, something we're going to have to watch over time. We have seen a slight increase. So can you go ahead and advance to the next slide, though? It does change, though. So if you're looking at this is called a crosstalk, right? So we took that question and now we're looking at it based on demographics, okay? So go ahead and just, it's going to point out some things. Thank you. So if you do look at this, what happens, though, is that you're seeing people who are older, people who own, and people who have lived here the longest kind of having different opinions. So if you've lived here longer, you actually don't think of it as highly as newer residents. I think that's a really interesting indicator of where this community is going. We're going to touch on that when we talk about safety as well. So some of the newer residents being really happy, some of our homeowners being really happy. That could run to the affordability of the community, things of that nature. That's enough on that slide. Moving on. So this is where it gets really interesting. So we just kind of saw this a decent number really of how people feel about the community as to live. But are we headed in the right direction? Are you seeing positive gains from year to year? And this is another great indicator of how we're doing. We are seeing a general increase. So with the 2 years, 2016 and 2018, it's kind of hard to draw a line, right? You can kind of see some linear things happening. But when you add the third year, you add the 2020, we're now seeing a very obvious line. We are on an upward path, going up from 71% just 4 years ago to 80% 2 years ago, now up to 81%. And I would also like to argue that given the year that we've had COVID, diversity and inclusion, a number of things hitting the city from the flooding to everything else, you're going to see a lot impact this number, so I think this really indicates some great growth. So the next couple sections are really about priorities. Because surveys, you really do want to get some quantitative data out of this. We often give them ideas for priorities, but the first question I'm going to show you, they came up with things all by themselves. So it was completely open-ended, and then the survey and analysts take that feedback and they pretty much count and categorize responses. So moving to priorities, Zach. This is one more slide, thank you. So when you're thinking, pretty much you were asked that question, when you think of issues, concerns, problems facing the city, this is what came up the highest. And again, on the right-hand side, you see that comparison to 2018, right? So we're kind of seeing the plus and minus percentage points. What's really interesting is we're seeing a statistically significant drop in crime reduction. So we're not seeing that as being the top thing that's being said anymore. And that's really interesting, especially as we're finishing up that first 3 years of the Safer Whitehall Initiative strategic plan. You do see some other interesting things, services, fixing infrastructure, sewers, which would have been a pain point this year, of course, with the flooding. Police, fire, parks, and rec did increase, as well as housing. I will point out housing too, it's gonna come up again later. Affordable housing actually was brought up quite frequently by residents, so it's something that's on their mind that could relate to the topics that we're talking about as a city or regionally with Morphe's regional housing study. I think people are really thinking about affordable housing and equity going hand in hand. Improving schools dropped, economy generally stayed the same, amenities, a little bit of a drop. Well, and all of those things really are within that margin of error. So they could be a trend, or we can maybe wait and see. So moving on, so to this next question, Zach, you can go ahead. There are going to be a couple different ones that come up. This is one of those examples of a question where we did give them ideas for what we think could be priorities and asked them to rank them. So they were actually given 8, so Zach's one more clicks, please. Sorry. I need to take that off. So, again, back to that affordable housing concept of all of these 8 things, even ahead of restaurant space, office space, housing for young professionals and empty nesters, affordable housing was selected by residents most frequently and by a very statistically significant difference. So the next closest thing being only 16%. So it didn't just win by a little bit, it won by quite a bit. So I think that's something that's really going to inform some of the decisions that we make in the coming years. It's also interesting as we have partners like Homeport coming in and continuing to do awesome projects like Hamilton Annex, Hamilton Crossing, things like that.
Can I ask a question, Megan?
Yes.
When they talk about, when they were talking about affordable housing, are they asking like new affordable housing or like current? Does that make sense?
So this specific question did not bring that out. So it's kind of phrased in a way, and I'd have to look back at exactly it, but I think, what do we need more of?
Okay,
You know,
that's what I was
so-
wondering, if it was like people are worried that they're not going to be able to afford to live where they're staying, or if it's they want to.
Yeah, it's definitely which one of these should be the high priority to obtain more of.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely, great question.
And actually, can I ask a quick question on the previous slide? I'll make this quick. On the police department, and I think it was down 8, is that right? So I look at that, you may think it down 8, gosh, is that a bad thing? I almost look at that as a good thing, because if it's not a priority, that means it's getting taken care of, so it's going to be...
That's not what I said, that is what I meant to say.
Oh, no, and maybe you did, but I mean, so even though it's a negative number, I think it's a positive number.
It is, yeah, and that's what we want to see. We want to see people not thinking of crime front of mind. We want to see other things as being their priorities. Obviously, if we're doing a good job, it shouldn't have to be a priority.
Correct, gotcha.
In some sense. And that's not true with every topic, but.
Correct, but okay.
Crime, yes. All right. Any other questions on this slide? Nope. Okay. Speaking of which, crime and safety. So here you're going to see some impact. We're going to get into the strata again in just a second, so keep that back in mind. The impact of different age groups and people who have lived here for different lengths of time. So this is another very common community survey question. Do you feel safe in the community that you live in, right? And so overall, 84% felt very safe or somewhat safe. And that's pretty much right in line with what we also saw in 2018. So again, we are seeing an upward trend. It's not spiking, but it is smoothly going upwards, right? But go on one more, Zach. This gets really interesting, and I don't want anybody to get scared by this next number. Sorry, next slide. Okay. So approximately 1/3 of residents reported that they have been a victim of crime in Whitehall. And you have to take that with a grain of salt because it could have been last year, could have been last month, or could have been 10 years ago. So when we do the strata, I need to keep that in mind. So have you been a victim and have you not been a victim? And this is pretty much in line with what we've seen. There's not a linear trend. It, was down a little bit in 2016, back up a bit in 2018, barely down again now. Go ahead, Zach, to the next slide. So here's where that strata really comes into play, and I think we're going to get some things highlighted. Thank you. So this is where the real difference comes in, and this is definitely statistically significant when you break it down. For those who have lived here 16 or more years, their propensity to have been a victim of crime is much higher than newer residents. That makes all the sense in the world because we're a community all on the move, a community that has made crime reduction a major priority recently. And so as people have lived here a shorter amount of time, they're not going to have been impacted by crime that we may have seen decades ago.
Okay.
City services. Okay, so getting into the meat of things for sure. Police services, and again, I'd like to point out the 2018 comparisons on the right-hand side. We're not seeing a statistically Police services at 87%, and then everything from garbage collection, fire and EMS, city leaf and brush collection services, all falling above that 80%. I will point out though that on this, only 2 have really decreased. Those are safety services. You might get a little bit of a negative connotation from COVID right now, mixed with some diversity and inclusion questions at the same time. So I think it's going to be interesting to see this again 2 years from now to see if this is a blip or if there is something for us to discuss. Oh, sorry, wasn't quite done there. So then other things that were a little bit lower but don't necessarily come up as priorities, street and road maintenance, and litter control still being at that 70% and above. So room for improvement, but pretty highly regarded services. However, at the start of the show, go ahead, not to steal the thunder, I think we all know that there's been a major shift in the Parks and Recreation Department in the last few years under some new leadership and some, I think, recommitments from everybody to make that a focal point as we add amenities to the community. And so this is, there's going to be a little bubbles act. So this is definitely statistically significant gain, over 10 percentage points in just a 2-year period. You can't argue against that. That's showing awesome improvement and how people are receiving this department. So that's fantastic work. All right, city officials. So how are we doing? Again, we kind of give them these topics and compare them, year over year. So look at that comparison to 2018. I think what you kind of see is the overall things being really good, and then when you get into specifics, some things lose a little bit of balance. For instance, managing the city's finances, while there's still a significant gain, you are seeing, about 50% satisfaction with that. I will say though, what you're not seeing is the number of people that say they don't know or they're not really sure because maybe perhaps they're not paying attention. And so for things like with managing finances, you do see a lot of people just say, I don't know. And so interesting takeaways there as well. Significant gains not really seen here except for that managing the city's finances. Okay. So moving into contacting the city. And so we asked everybody, have you had contact with the city in the last 2 years? And so the stats that you see are only for those residents who said they had contact. We then asked them to tell us who they contacted. So this makes all the sense in the world. Most people would be calling the service department and then closely followed by, well, not really closely followed by police, but followed by police and so on. And then we asked them to describe their experience while they did that. So this is definitely another improvement point, but it does have a little bit of nuance to this answer. So you're seeing about 58% being very satisfied or somewhat satisfied, meaning that we're hovering around somewhere around 37% being dissatisfied or very dissatisfied. Marty put this on here from Sadler Stevens and Associates. He actually said it's unclear whether the dissatisfaction reflects bad news or bad service, which I think we all understand are 2 different things. And so they actually do a lot of follow-up on this specific question, and they ask them, why were you dissatisfied? And what we found, and we did highlight this under room for improvement on the infographic, is that 18% of those people who were unhappy, oh, it's not, honestly, 18% of those people that were unhappy with their service, it was because somebody was unfriendly to them on the phone, rude perhaps. And then another 12% felt like it wasn't efficient and they were getting shuffled around. I think that's where the room for improvement really is on, because we can do that with process improvement, we can do better customer service training, we can, do some kind of, line shopping type thing and get feedback that way as well. There was a significant portion of that group that did say they did not get the result they wanted. So again, that might be different than bad customer service. Okay, now we can contact. All right, on to communication. So back to, I think this is a really interesting takeaway from the survey overall, that over a third or about a third of our residents are getting their news from Facebook about the city. I think, the digital age, it's bewildering, really. What we're seeing is kind of this, traditional print media being left behind onto social media. And so as we kind of commit to a better website, better social media presence, it really is having an impact. Something else that had a statistically significant gain was the city e-news update, something that we'll continue to do weekly moving forward. It's a really interesting thing.
do they have like all languages, or is it only English and Spanish?
So unfortunately, we made the decision this year to actually pay for Spanish translators. And so if they picked up the phone and they indicated in some way that they needed to speak Spanish, they were actually called back by a Spanish-speaking surveyor. You have to, there's quite a bit that goes into that. So unfortunately, you have to pay for that service and you have to pick a language specifically. It wouldn't be English. So.
Do you know, was there like a set amount of people that didn't speak English but didn't speak Spanish either, or?
I don't believe that we got that feedback. I will say that it was interesting in speaking with Saperstein and Associates. A lot of people answered the phone in Spanish, indicated that they might want to take it in Spanish, and then continued taking the survey in English instead of waiting for that translator. So there's a little bit of like, oh, okay, I think I can do this anyway. And so that was kind of an interesting feedback point, but he didn't take any indication of, okay, let's say I speak a mark or something like that, I can't take this with you. We weren't able to take that feedback. So.
On the numbers of dialed, 12,006, contacted 355. Were they called during a specific time? 'Cause it would seem like that number is quite low of contacts.
The 355?
Correct.
So you're not entirely incorrect. So the feedback from Saperstein and Associates was that it is getting harder and harder to conduct these surveys. A number of people stop picking up the phone unless you recognize the number, simply because of the number of telecalls we get, things like that. And in fact, they can't have their phone number anymore identify themselves as Saperstein and Associates because of the way technology is now set up. After one phone number dials so many phone numbers so quickly, it actually shuts that number off to prevent telemarketers, meaning they have to use something like 20 different numbers to get this survey done. So there are layers to this. They do poll at all different times of the day. I believe they focus more on the evening hours. I don't have that data in front of me on that, but they do attempt to.
And everything, this is all landlines, correct?
No, actually, so it could also be cell phone numbers.
Okay.
And actually, I think in the complete survey results, there is a breakdown of how
Of the
we
cell
get it.
versus.
Yeah, so we get that both from voter rolls and then also more of the cell phone numbers come from the school voter registration.
Any on the weekends, attempts on the weekends that you know
I
of?
believe so.
Okay, okay.
And the other thing I just want to point out too, it's not 355 contacts, it's 355 people who
Right.
went through the complete survey.
Correct.
So, and they did reach a lot more people.
And then, yeah,
Who said, no, I don't want to take that.
Because on average, how long did it take to take the survey?
I think it's 20, 30
It's
minutes.
25 minutes.
You're right, because it's, I thought I saw, which is a considerable chunk of time, because just reading it, there's a lot of questions.
There are a lot of questions. Something that we didn't summarize tonight for you all, but that's something that we need to talk about internally. We also did ask questions about the impact of COVID-19, as well as their perceptions involving diversity and inclusion from this year. So those are things for us to digest. In fact, we're going to be able to get results from the same survey taken in New Albany. So it should be a really interesting kind of comparison that we're going to be able to do. That information is available online and of course can be shared with you all and with our staff as well.
So what Mr. Woodruff just said, if something happened where they were busy after 15 minutes, did we go back and try to contact them again and try to pick up where we left off?
So
Or
they
did
could
they just go
actually
to?
indicate that they wanted to be called back.
Okay.
And they could finish it later.
Okay.
Now, were respondents that, say, got halfway through, then they had to bug off, were those responses captured, or was it all or nothing?
It's all or nothing.
Okay.
Oh.
Right,
Okay.
because that is not statistically.
Right.
Right, I can see where one area could skew another, but, right.
Has any consideration been made for mailing surveys rather than phone?
That is something that we discuss kind of each year when you're talking about internally how to do these. And communities have even moved some of these completely online. There are some unfortunate imbalances that can happen from that, especially when you only do it online. The mailed survey, the drawbacks tend to be what happens when you run into language issues, when you have come into issues with reading comprehension levels and things like that. Saperstein and Associates is a firm believer that phone surveys continue to be the best way to get statistically significant results. They're not the only way though, so as this kind of evolves and as a telemarketer issue continues to consider changing.
Just 12,600. That's a large number of attempts. How long did they, for
It was a month only.
30 days? Okay.
Which is significantly longer. In fact, I had to keep getting them back on the phone to be like, hey, are you guys done yet? Nope, not this week. So it was a major effort on their part, and more significant than just 2 years ago.
And the last thing I would mention too, just piggyback on what Megan said, is this also is to ensure that this is as close to representing our community in all ways than just the first 355 people who want to take the survey, right? So that it really was reflective of where they live in the community, age, married, kids, demographically, all of those things, so that it really was a true good snapshot of the community.
Take some of the selection bias out of all of it.
Very good presentation.
Megan, thank you very much. Was there any other questions for Megan?
Thank you.
Thank you, and I look forward to doing some further reading on that. At this time, I'll let Julie. I don't know, that's a good question.
I'll ask that.
At this time, it's our first poll public of the evening, and speaking with Ms. Aug, there were no comments sent to her, so we will move on to our standing committee reports, and we'll start with Administration and Financial Management, Chairperson Bailey.
Hey, Mr. President, Administration Financial Management did meet last Tuesday, and our minutes are on file, and we hope to meet again next Tuesday sometime after 6:30.
Thank you. Community and Elder Advocacy, Chairperson Elmore, who would like to take that for her? Yeah, who is number 2 in her committee?
All right. The Community and Elder Advocacy met last Tuesday. The minutes are on file, and we'll meet again next Tuesday sometime after 6:30. And Community Standards and Enforcement also met last Tuesday. Our minutes are on file, and we'll meet again next Tuesday sometime after 6:30.
Thank you. Economic Development, Chairperson Morrison.
Thank you, Mr. President. Economic Development also met last Tuesday. Our minutes are on file. We'll meet again next Tuesday, sometime after 6:30. And we have a few items up for consideration this evening.
Very good. Infrastructure, Maintenance, and Services, Chairperson Heck.
Thank you, Mr. President. Infrastructure, Maintenance, and Services met last Tuesday. Our minutes are on file. We have no drafts or pending legislation at this time. We will meet sometime after 6:30 next Tuesday.
Public Safety, Chairperson Coniston.
Thank you, Mr. President. Public Safety did meet last week. Our minutes are on file, and we'll meet again next Tuesday about 6:40.
Okay, very good. Officials reports, Mayor Maggard.
I have no official report, just the fact that the city is doing everything it can to wrap up business for the end of the year and get started on the next year, and that's about it. Thank you.
Okay, and I skipped Parks and Recreation. I apologize, Mr. Cantor.
You're fine. I was listening to the mayor. Parks and Recreation met last week. Our minutes are on file. And as I said last week, we did open interviews for the Parks Commission on the 18th. I will be making a motion for 2 individuals later on tonight.
Very good.
We'll meet
Thank you.
again next week.
Okay, and thank you, Mr. Morrison, for also helping keep me on a straight and narrow. City Attorney Michael Bivens is not with us this evening. City Auditor Miller is not with us this evening. Director of Development and Public Services, Zach Woodruff.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have no official report this evening. I do want to extend my thanks to our street crew and to our snow warriors who were called in this morning at 3 to start dealing with the first winter weather of the season. When I got here this morning, obviously it was clear pavement, and so I really want to extend my thanks to them for doing a great job as they always do. So,
And as they
thank you,
always
Mr.
do.
President.
Thank you. Our Director of Public Service, Mr. Fanny Rigg, is not with us this evening, nor is our Treasurer, Steve Wenzel. The following official reports have been filed in the Council office since the last meeting. The Treasurer's Investment Report for October 2020, the Treasurer's Activity by Fund Report for October 2020, the Treasurer's Fund Reconciliation Report for October 2020, the Auditor's Expense Report for October 2020, the Auditor's Bank Report for October 2020, the Auditor's Statement of Cash Position Report for October 2020, And finally, the auditor's revenue report for October 2020. Under communications, petitions, and claims, there have been no communications, petitions, or claims filed in the council office since our last meeting.
Mr. President, at this time, I'd like to make a motion to appoint Chris Bolich and Nathaniel Stewart, who goes by the name of Nate, to the a 3-year term beginning January 1st, 2021, to the Parks and Recreation Commission, please.
And I'd like to second that.
Very good. A motion has been made by Mr. Cantor, seconded by Ms. Coniston, for the 2 appointments of the Parks and Recreation Commission. Is there any discussion on the motion? Ms. Aug?
Coniston,
Yes.
Cantor,
Yes.
Heck,
Yes.
Morrison,
Yes.
Bailey,
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
The motion is carried, and we now have 2 new members to the Parks and Recreation Commission, and we welcome them to their positions.
Yes.
And they will be sworn in by the mayor. I'm sure she will let them know when and how it will be done.
Very good. I'd like to thank
Virtually, I think you have 3 or 4.
At this time, I'll ask Ms. Aug to take a roll as to whether each member of council was given a copy of each item of legislation listed on the agenda prior to the meeting, and including any add-on legislation.
Coniston,
Yes.
Cantor,
Yes.
Heck,
Yes.
Morrison,
Yes.
Bailey,
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Thank you. This evening, under 3rd reading, we have one ordinance, 97-2020, reclassifying a fund advance as a fund transfer and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I'd like to introduce ordinance 97-2020 and move to adopt.
Second.
A motion has been made by Mr. Bailey, seconded by Mr. Morrison, for the adoption of ordinance 97-2020. Is there any discussion on the motion? Ms. Aug, please call roll.
Coniston,
Yes.
Cantor,
Yes.
Heck,
Yes.
Morrison,
Yes.
Bailey,
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Ordinance 97-2020 has been adopted. Under 2nd reading, we have several items listed this evening, and starting with ordinance 98-2020, which will be read by title only, making appropriation for current general fund 101 expenses, street 201 expenses, and state highway materials 211 expenses during the period from January 1st, 2021 to December 31st, 2021, and the total amount or sum of $35,683,861 and declaring an emergency. Again, that's title only. Ordinance 99-2020, also title only, amending 161.38 of the codified ordinances of the City of Whitehall, Ohio, titled Salary Schedule, and declaring an emergency. Ordinance 100-2020 will also be read by title only this evening, amending the table of authorized personnel 161.37J, Department of Economic and Community Development, and declaring an emergency. Ordinance 101-2020, amending 161.17I, sick leave with pay, and declaring an emergency, also title only. Ordinance 101-2020, also being read by title only, authorizing and approving a fund transfer from unappropriated monies in the General Fund 101, the Capital Improvement Project Fund 311, and the amount of $1,100,000, and declaring an emergency. Ordinance 110-2020 will be read by title only, and it's authorizing and approving a fund transfer in the amount of $75,000 from unappropriated monies in the General Fund 101 to the Community Development Trust Fund 550. Also being read by title only this evening will be Ordinance 111-2020, authorizing and approving a fund transfer in the amount of $125,000 from the General Fund 101 to Street Maintenance and Repair Fund 201. Ordinance 112-2020 will be read by title only, amending 135.16C1, titled Capital Improvement and Project Fund. Ordinance 113-2020 will be read by title only, amending 135.18B, titled Fleet Reserve and Maintenance Fund, and declaring an emergency. Ordinance 114-2020, title only as well, amending 135.21B1, Water and Sewer Mandate Improvement Reserve Fund, and declaring an emergency. Rounding out our title-only ordinances under 2nd reading will be 115-2020, making appropriation for certain special reserve internal service and fiduciary accounts for the calendar year 2021 in the total sum of $11,453,378 Resolution 41, 2020, authorizing the mayor to enter into the Jefferson Township Whitehall Joint Economic Development District Income Tax Collection and Distribution Agreement and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I wish to introduce Resolution 41, 2020, and move for the suspension of all the rules.
Second?
Resolution 41, 2020 was introduced by Mr. Morrison, seconded by Mr. Cantor, with a request to suspend all rules. Any discussion? Ms. Aug?
Coniston,
Yes.
Cantor,
Yes.
Heck,
Yes.
Morrison,
Yes.
Bailey,
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
The rules have been suspended.
Move to adopt.
Second?
Move to adopt by Mr. Morrison, second by Mr. Cantor. Any discussion? Ms. Aug?
Coniston,
Yes.
Cantor,
Yes.
Heck,
Yes.
Morrison,
Yes.
Bailey,
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Resolution 41, 2020 has been adopted. Under first reading this evening, we have ordinance 118, 2020, making a supplemental appropriation in the amount of $10,000 from unappropriated monies in the General Fund 101 to the comp and buyback account 101-900-51,280 and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I'd like to introduce ordinance 118, 2020, move for suspension of all rules.
Second.
Mr. Bailey has introduced ordinance 118, 2020, second by Mr. Morrison, with a request to suspend all rules. Any discussion? Ms. Aug, please call roll.
Coniston,
Yes.
Cantor,
Yes.
Heck,
Yes.
Morrison,
Yes.
Bailey,
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
The rules have been suspended.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Movement to adopt by Mr. Bailey, second by Mr. Morrison. Any discussion? Ms. Aug?
Coniston,
Yes.
Cantor,
Yes.
Heck,
Yes.
Morrison,
Yes.
Bailey,
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Ordinance 118, 2020 has been adopted. Ordinance 119, 2020, approving and making a supplemental appropriation of $10,000 from unappropriated monies in the Law Enforcement Trust Fund 241 to Law Enforcement Trust Set-Aside Account 241-000-51,000 and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I'd like to introduce ordinance 119, 2020, move for suspension of all rules.
Second.
Mr. Bailey has introduced ordinance 119, 2020, second by Mr. Morrison, and requested for suspension of all rules. Any discussion? Ms. Aug, please call roll.
Coniston,
Yes.
Cantor,
Yes.
Heck,
Yes.
Morrison,
Yes.
Bailey,
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
The rules have been suspended.
Thank you, Mr. President. Move to adopt.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Bailey, second by Mr. Morrison for adoption. Any discussion? Ms. Aug, please call roll.
Coniston,
Yes.
Cantor,
Yes.
Heck,
Yes.
Morrison,
Yes.
Bailey,
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Ordinance 119, 2020 has been adopted. Ordinance 120, 2020, approving and making a supplemental appropriation of $9,840,000 from unappropriated monies in the Debt Service Fund 401 to the Debt Service Account 401.000.50,000 and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I'd like to introduce ordinance 120, 2020, and move for suspension of all rules.
Second.
Mr. Morrison has introduced ordinance 120, 2020 with a request for suspension of all rules, seconded by Ms. Coniston. Any discussion on the motion? Ms. Aug?
Coniston,
Yes.
Cantor,
Yes.
Heck,
Yes.
Morrison,
Yes.
Bailey,
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
The rules have been suspended.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Motion to adopt by Mr. Bailey, seconded by Ms. Coniston. Any discussion? Ms. Aug, please call roll.
Coniston,
Yes.
Cantor,
Yes.
Heck,
Yes.
Morrison,
Yes.
Bailey,
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Ordinance 120, 2020 has been adopted. Ordinance 121, 2020, approving and making a supplemental appropriation of $200,000 from unappropriated monies in the General Fund 101, the self-funded health insurance expense account 101.900.51,015, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I'd like to introduce ordinance 121, 2020, and move for suspension of all rules.
Second.
Mr. Bailey has introduced ordinance 121, 2020 with request to suspend all rules, second by Ms. Coniston. Any discussion? Ms. Aug, please call roll.
Coniston,
Yes.
Cantor,
Yes.
Heck,
Yes.
Morrison,
Yes.
Bailey,
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
The rules have been suspended.
Move to adopt.
Second?
Motion to adopt by Mr. Bailey, second by Ms. Coniston. Any discussion? Ms. Aug.
Coniston,
Yes.
Cantor,
Yes.
Heck,
Yes.
Morrison,
Yes.
Bailey,
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Ordinance 121, 2020 has been adopted. Ordinance 121, 2020, approving and making a supplemental appropriation of $35,359.53 from previously unappropriated monies in the Wim Petty Fund 279 to the Creative Palette Incentive Account 279.000.50,007, making and approving the fund transfer in the amount of $35,359.53 from the Creative Palette Incentive Account 279.000.50,007 to the Economic Development Incentive Planning Fund 316, making a supplemental appropriation of $35,359.53 from the Economic Development Incentive Planning Fund 316 to the Economic Development Incentive Account 316.000.50,000 and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I wish to introduce ordinance 122, 2020, and move for the suspension of all rules.
Second?
There's been a motion by Mr. Morrison, second by Ms. Coniston, to introduce ordinance 122, 2020, and to suspend all rules. Any discussion? Ms. Aug, please call roll.
Coniston,
Yes.
Cantor,
Yes.
Heck,
Yes.
Morrison,
Yes.
Bailey,
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
The rules have been suspended.
Move to adopt?
Second?
Motion to adopt by Mr. Morrison, second by Ms. Coniston. Any discussion? Ms. Aug.
Coniston,
Yes.
Cantor,
Yes.
Heck,
Yes.
Morrison,
Yes.
Bailey,
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Ordinance 122, 2020 has been adopted. Ordinance 123, 2020, authorizing the creation of the JED Miscellaneous Expense Account 101.350.56,000, approving and making an appropriation in the amount of $2,000 from unappropriated monies in the General Fund 101, the JED Miscellaneous Expense Account 101.350.56,000, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I wish to introduce ordinance 123, 2020, and move for the suspension of all rules.
Second?
Mr. Morrison has introduced ordinance 123, 2020 with a request to suspend all rules, seconded by Ms. Coniston. Any discussion? Ms. Aug?
Coniston,
Yes.
Cantor,
Yes.
Heck,
Yes.
Morrison,
Yes.
Bailey,
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
The rules have been suspended.
Move to adopt?
Second?
Motion to adopt by Mr. Morrison, seconded by Ms. Coniston. Any discussion? Ms. Aug, please call roll.
Coniston,
Yes.
Cantor,
Yes.
Heck, Morrison,
Yes.
Bailey,
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Ordinance 123, 2020 has been adopted. Resolution 43, 2020, strongly opposing Senate Bill 352 and House Bill 754. Legislation proposing the repeal of Section 29 of 197, which will result in a myriad of unintended consequences through Ohio's entire municipal income tax system, cause a substantial loss of revenue that will impede the ability of municipalities to provide for these health, safety, and welfare of municipal residents and businesses, and therefore jeopardize the future economic growth of the state of Ohio, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I'd like to introduce Resolution 43, 2020, and move for the suspension of all the rules, please.
Second?
Third.
Resolution 43, 2020 has been introduced by Mr. Cantor, second by Mr. Rodriguez, with a request to suspend all rules. Any discussion on suspension of rules? Ms. Aug.
Coniston,
Yes.
Cantor,
Yes.
Heck,
Yes.
Morrison,
Yes.
Bailey,
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
The rules have been suspended.
Thank you, Mr. President. Move to adopt, please.
Second?
Motion to adopt by Mr. Cantor, second by Mr. Rodriguez. Any discussion? Hearing none, please call roll.
Coniston,
Yes.
Cantor,
Yes.
Heck,
Yes.
Morrison,
Yes.
Bailey,
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Resolution 43, 2020 has been adopted. And finally this evening, Resolution 44, 2020, resolving to approve then and now certificates and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I'd like to introduce Resolution 44, 2020, and move for suspension of the rules.
Second?
Resolution 44, 2020 has been introduced by Mr. Bailey, requesting suspension of all rules, second by Mr. Rodriguez. Any discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Aug.
Coniston,
Yes.
Cantor,
Yes.
Heck,
Yes.
Morrison,
Yes.
Bailey,
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
The rules have been suspended.
Move to adopt.
Second?
Thank you. Motion to adopt by Mr. Bailey, second by Mr. Rodriguez. Any discussion? Ms. Aug, please call roll.
Coniston,
Yes.
Cantor,
Yes.
Heck,
Yes.
Morrison,
Yes.
Bailey,
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Thank you. Resolution 44, 2020 has been adopted. Which brings us to our second poll public, and again, we have had nothing submitted to the council office. So we'll now move to Community Date Board.
Actually,
My eyes always go
I
to
just thought
you.
of something, yes. WCCA will be going around the week of Christmas to judge the Christmas light houses. So, and I'm noticing that there's a lot of good ones that are coming up around the neighborhoods. So keep up the good work and can't wait to see them.
Thank you. You just have anything else? We'll then go to poll council. And Ms. Coniston, you're up again.
Well, great. Well, thank you everybody for watching, and thank you Megan for that great presentation. And welcome Nate, and welcome back Chris to the Parks and Rec Commission.
That will bring us to Mr. Camp.
Thank you, Mr. President, and as Councilperson Coniston said, thank you for watching. Thank you, Megan. Congratulations, Chris and Nate. I know Michael and Joy are watching, so buy him that car. And with that, I love you girls. Daddy will see you soon.
Thank
Happy
you.
holidays, everybody coming up.
Ms. Heck.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, everybody watching from home. Thank you, Megan, for giving us a breakdown of the survey, and thank you for posting it so everybody at home can kind of follow along too. And I echo the congratulations to Chris and Nate. And that's all I have for tonight.
Great, thank you. Mr. Morrison.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd also like to thank everyone for watching. Megan, you've done a great job. Really appreciate all your efforts. Congratulations to Chris and Nate, and everyone stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bailey.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd just like to wish everybody a continuation of the holidays. I hope everybody's was as good as mine. It's actually different, but relaxing. And I want to thank Wes's committee, Park and Rec Committee, for the two appointments, two good guys. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rodriguez.
As many times as I've heard it, you think I remember all that, so let's see, Chris and Nate, Megan, Street Warriors, great job. Huge crowd at the virtual Christmas tree lighting. And I'm missing something, I can't remember, but that's it, thank you.
And thank you. I would just like to add, again, thank everyone for watching at home along with us. Congratulations to Nate and Chris as well. I'd also like to publicly thank President Pro Tem Bailey for covering for me the last several meetings when I wasn't here. It's very much appreciated. And as we're getting to the home stretch of this battle we're calling COVID, and horizon coming our way with the vaccine, hopefully getting to everyone by spring. Invite everybody to stay vigilant, do the right thing, and be safe. Thank you. At this time, I'll accept a motion.
Second, third.
Okay, well, a motion to adjourn by Mr. Bailey, second by Mr. Rodriguez. I think we should discuss this in length, or not. Ms. Aug, please call roll.
Coniston,
Yes.
Cantor,
Yes, I follow.
Heck,
Yes.
Morrison,
Yes.
Bailey,
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
We are adjourned.